This video is going to be about Riese und Müller's relatively new custom short series hand-built Birdy P45. This is not the normal Birdy and it is not a mass-produced item. It's actually hand-built in Germany, which I guess makes it even more of a collector's item. The cost is $4,000, and I'm gonna go over the details of this. Riese und Müller claims that they brought out this model mainly because 2025 is the 30th birthday of the Birdy brand and the 45th anniversary of Pacific Cycles. As you know, Pacific is the company that fabricates, not so much manufactures, but hand fabricates almost all of the Birdy bikes out there, including the ones that are assembled in Germany. The ones that are hand assembled in Germany are done so only because of EU laws protecting the European labor markets. The rest of the world is buying Birdies straight from Taiwan. The excuse for making this bike is that anniversary, but if this design is so earth-shatteringly good, then you are wondering why not just change all of the Birdy models to look like this frame. High performance bike, legacy of innovation. It is certainly one of a kind frame. It kind of circles back to the original Birdy, which was more of this squarish Scandinavian straight line design. This is the one I had. I had exactly almost entirely the same Birdy as you see here, and I rode it for 12 years. It was a great bike for sure, not as good as the new monocoque versions, but certainly a very good bike. Now, Birdy moved away from this straight line design. The more recent bikes, the monocoque frame that you see on the right side, is much more fluid. It's less Scandinavian, and I think it's more rigid as well, because bent shapes, just like the traditional fork of the steel Brompton, are more difficult to bend and they do not vibrate as much. So this is actually a better design, and you can see that it supports the seat post a little bit better than this one. Although you could argue that this one really grabs it pretty high because the top tube itself is positioned higher overall. Maybe it connects to the front at the same point, but overall it is a higher point. So maybe this one is just as supportive. You see that they put all these creases into the tube. This is hydroformed, so the way it is done is, this is actually a round tube, but they place it inside a mold and they pump high pressure liquids inside, and the liquid forces the tube to press against the mold, and that's how this shape is created. But you can also see that it's not a single piece. You can see the brazing around at several points, and the workmanship is really good, just like you would see on the Brompton or the Moulton. Very nice, handmade, and I guess you have the bragging right of an anniversary edition, and it's German built. Internal cabling, as with all of the monocoque Birdies. As far as advanced components, there really is only one unusual, maybe two components. One is that you do get the aerodynamic carbon rims, which are nice, and there is this unique single piece crank here, which is very limiting. I find it very limiting because you're not going to be able to replace the chain wheel. To mount a dual chain wheel, for example, with this setup, you would have to replace the entire crank to do so, which is doable, but it is a pain to do it. I'm also not crazy about drop bars in general, but this is supposed to be a racing bike, so I guess it's the logical way to do it. It's a very attractive bike, no question about it. And unlike the other rims on the other Birdy, which I shall feature in the next video, the so-called Joseph Cusack Birdy, these rims are not that bad looking. With the Joseph Cusack, you have those big logos, which I really do not like. The way Cusack does them. I also noticed that this front piece was a single piece, at least on the titanium Birdy. I think it still is, whereas now I see that there is a bracing there. So it cannot be quite as rigid as a single piece, and I'm not sure why they would not resort to replacing all of them as a single piece item. I want to see how it folds. This is how the P45 folds. As you can see, the bullhorn handlebar sort of fits into it, but it's definitely going to be a thicker fold than you would get with the Brompton. Obviously, we are comparing apples to oranges, but just for the sake of knowing, it's not going to be as slim as a Brompton fold, but it's going to be a higher performance. Some people have installed bullhorn bars on the Brompton as well, so it can be done. And you can see this weird, very intricate way that the chain is folding. That's because they are using a chain stay, not just in the rear, but also at the crank. You can see the chain stay here sticking out. Here it is again, and when it folds, it pulls the chain into a unique shape. Overall, a nice bike, but for $4,000, I might consider spending less, $2,500 or so, on a more standard Birdy and just configuring it myself the same way I have done with the Brompton. I like to be in control of what's installed and how the frame is tuned. That gives me a whole lot more power on the long run, and also it makes it easier to replace and repair things. As far as the brake is concerned, it's a nice hydraulic brake system, and I wonder if this is the type that is using a wire. As you can see, there is a wire coming down. You are really pulling a wire, and there is a hydraulic system just at the bottom. I will say more about this technology in the next video. I think it's a long overdue upgrade and just makes the system so much easier to maintain, because if you have liquids in the entire section of the tube, then it's going to be very difficult to do the maintenance, because you have to drain the liquids here and then replace them. Whereas if you just have hydraulic at the bottom and you are using a wire to basically switch around this little hydraulic machinery down here, then you only need to replace the wire. So the maintenance is very much the same as you would get with a standard wired mechanical disc brake. There are two finishes available. One is a kind of bronze-like, supposedly titanium-looking finish. I don't think it looks very titanium-like. I like the silver one, which actually looks more like titanium. This is an aluminum frame, so you're not talking about real titanium. The actual titanium Birdy that cost a mountain of money is something that they make only once in a decade, and it actually weighs 25 pounds. This frame weighs a little over 23 pounds. Birdy's own claim is that this is one of the lightest bicycles of its kind on the market. This is an exaggeration. Even the Brompton titanium frame is much lighter than this. It stays under 20 pounds even with the 12-speed derailleur set. And of course, there are several Alex Moulton racing bikes, especially the Speed, that are no heavier than 20 or maybe 21 pounds. So the weight of the bike is not earth-shakingly light. They claim that the look of the frame is unique or modern. I'm not sure if this is true. There are also arguments about it being aerodynamic. I don't think this is more aerodynamic than you would be with the one on the right, which is the more traditional design, which I think is more smooth and fluid. So I don't think you would experience much of an improvement by buying this bicycle on the left. It is a nice bike. Would I spend $4,000 to get it? Probably not. I will look into the Joseph Cusack version on the next video, and I think that one might be more worth it to spend the $4,000. This is for people who want the bragging right of an old German-made Birdy that has a unique design that does not look like any of the others, and it's probably not going to be made in huge quantities in the long run, so it is going to become a collector's item.
I'll be back.